welcome to our super sunny classroom here at Crooklets. We're so excited to be here again today to tell you all about seaweeds. But before we do that, let's go and see what's off on our beach.
We've had some really big waves and lots of wind over the last few days, but really tiny tides. Can you remember what happens when the tides are really small and what kind of plastics come ashore? That's right, it's the tiny plastics. Time to go do a little 2-minute beach clean and see what we can find, but I don't think I'm going to have any need for this, as it's all going to be the microplastics. All right, well, I don't think I'm going to need to move very far. Loads of these white things. No idea what that could have been. There's lots of that. What else have we got? Another bit of the white stuff there. That one in the bucket. Something plastic long maybe. Oh, and over here we've got loads of nurdles. Look at all of these. Oh, well, that's a little bit of polystyrene, that is. Some more nurdles in the middle here. Oh, nice blue one. Don't often get the blue nurdles. It's quite a pretty one. Oh, look, in fact, there's another blue one there. Loads of nurdles in this little section. Oh, I like that one. Oh, that's bright turquoise. Put them in there before I drop them. What else have we got here? Something red. Now, we know nothing natural is going to be red. Just some general microplastics, no idea what they're going to have come from. Very sandy. Something yellow, again that's not anything natural, is it? Bright yellow. Bright blue, makes it really easy to spot when it's like that, doesn't it? And a bright pink, that's nice too. Oh look, I've just seen another massive bit of polystyrene there too. What else have we got? A tiny little bit of fishing rope, not much. And that looks like a bottle top to me, something like that. Just move this gently. So many microplastics in here, just loads and loads of little nurdles. Gosh, I wonder how many I'm going to catch in this 2 minutes. There's loads in here. Still going, finding absolutely loads. What else have we got? Something green, that's bound to be something plastic. Yep, random little bit of microplastic there. Okay, well that was fun.
Wow, good one, Claire. What did you find?
Well actually, Helen, I found loads and loads of nurdles and microplastics, and actually every single time you really carefully move a little bit of the seaweed, you just find a whole nother layer. It doesn't look like much in my bucket, but I reckon there's probably 200 or 300 little bits of plastic in there.
Wow, what a great way to start the lesson. That's 2 minutes of positivity right there.
Absolutely. And what are you going to do today for 2 minutes that's going to make you feel great?
And that could be 2 minutes for the planet or 2 minutes for somebody else.
So, what are we going to be learning about today then? Today we are going to be learning all about seaweeds, what they are, why they're great for you and how to use them. We've also got some new words for you.
Absolutely. And our words today are algae, photosynthesis, sustainability and poisonous. Listen out for them throughout the lesson today. Right, I'm going to head back to the classroom and Claire is off to see the rock pools. See you in a mo. So here we are at week 5 of our beach school. Let's have a little recap about what we've been doing over the past 4 weeks. We've had a look at geographical features here. Thanks for sending in your fab posters. We've looked at plastics, we've looked at gyres and we've done some experiments too.
And we learned all about the ghost nets and the nurdles in that lesson where we taught you all about the biggest things in the sea and the smallest things in the sea. And if you remember, we asked you if you could write a poem or a rap about nurdles and nets. We've had some great ones sent in to us. Helen, why don't you read us out your favourite?
Nurdles by Hazel. Nurdles aren't fantastic, the raw form of plastic. Spilled during plastic's making, it would leave you shaking. They drift away through rivers and lakes, through storms, heat waves and earthquakes, littering the shingle, sand and seaweed of the beaches that we need. The tiny white nurdles seem to be food, and when the fish see, they eat those nurdles, but they will soon be very, very ill. So pick up the nurdles you see. You don't know how useful they can be. Make a nurdle piece of art or put different colours on a nurdle chart. Upcycle all of the nurdles you've seen. So last week we learned all about tides and rock pools and the saltiness of those rock pools. lots and lots of things. So now I'm going to give you 2 minutes. And what I want you to do, either write, draw, or chat to somebody about what you have enjoyed doing over the past few weeks, something that you have learnt, and one fun fact as well. If you don't get finished in that 2 minutes, don't worry, you can finish it off later. How did you get on? Don't worry if you didn't finish it, that's not a problem at all, you can do that later. But let's head over to Claire now and see how she's getting on.
I'm over here and I'm so excited to tell you all about seaweeds. So let's start simple. What actually is a seaweed? Well, I've got a few examples here of ones that I found on the beach this morning along the strand line. But what is it? Well, let me tell you this. It's not an animal, although it lives in rock pools with other animals. And it's not a plant, although it looks a little bit like a plant and it kind of works in a similar way. It's actually an algae. Now that's one of your words for today. Maybe you've heard it before. We've actually got 650 different species of algae in the UK. Now if we have a look at these three here, what can we see is one major difference between the three? What do you think?
I reckon I can see one, Claire. Is it the colour?
Yep, it is. So seaweeds are either called red, green or brown. Now it's a little bit confusing because sometimes the brown ones look a little bit red and sometimes the green ones can go a little bit brown, but you get the idea. Now we said earlier that they're quite similar to plants, and I'm sure you've all seen plants before. All you need to do is look outside at a tree or a piece of grass and you'll have seen a plant. So what does a plant need in order to survive?
Oh, I think I know. Is it that they're similar to people?
Exactly it is, and what do people need in order to be healthy? We need water, air and food.
Amazing. We're going to learn about this later on in the lesson.
Now seaweed areas are often called forests of the sea, so let's have a think about that. Why do things live in forests? I'm going to give you 30 seconds to have a little think, make a list if you like. Helen, you have a go too.
Righto, let's have a little think. So the first one, when I go to the woods and the forests, I like to play. And it also keeps me protected, so I can build a house. And it gives me shelter from the rain and from the sun and from predators as well. Gosh, that's the 30 seconds. I've got loads of ideas. Shall we have another 30 seconds? Let's carry on for a moment. We've got food, and you can often find water in the forest. And what else is there? Oh, fire and warmth. You might be able to find something to keep you warm. Fire and warmth. Oh, and protection, absolutely. Yeah, let's have a think. Protection. And that's our 30 seconds. Brilliant.
Great, now let's have a look at some of your ideas, Helen, and see why the forests on the land are the same as the forests of the sea.
Houses.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's the same with the seaweeds as well. Shrimps and crabs and other little animals will make their homes amongst the seaweed because it gives them protection from some other animals. Now, what else have we got on there? Lots of food, yes, exactly. Now, if you think about a forest, lots of animals like squirrels, foxes and rabbits, they eat the berries and the leaves and the nuts that they find in the forests. Same as in the rock pools, and loads of different animals eat those seaweeds. It's their favourite kind of food. Now, what else have we got in here? Shelter. Now, why do you think that, Helen?
So that could be shelter from the rain and also shelter from the sun.
Yes, exactly, and it's the same for seaweeds, who offer protection for other little sea cuties who might need a bit of shelter from the elements. What else do you think that seaweed forests can protect?
Land.
Absolutely, the land. Now, seaweed acts as a really good sea defence. Do you remember that from a couple of weeks ago? What happens is the seaweed can absorb some of the power from the waves, and it means it doesn't come to us on the beaches and on the land.
So let's just check this out. It's for food, houses, protection for our sea creatures and our coastlines. Who knew?
I know, right? Seaweeds are super cool, but they're facing some challenges. Now, I'm going to come back to you in the classroom to talk this through, Helen, but it's going to take me a couple of minutes. Why don't you guys do a mind map while I'm on my way? Helen can do it too on the big whiteboard. Let's think about all the things we've learned so far. See you in a mo.
I'm going to talk you through what I've written here. They come in different colours. They're called algae. There's 650 different types. They're food for creatures, they're houses, they live in rock pools, they protect the coastlines and sea defences and animals. I really like the fact that they're known as forests of the sea. I'm going to head over to Claire and see what she's been up to.
So we've talked about how awesome seaweeds are for the animals in our oceans and for us here living on the coast, but we haven't yet worked out how they've adapted to living on our coastlines.
Do you remember that word, adapt, from last week? It's how an animal or plant changes to live within its habitat.
Absolutely it does, but before we go into that, we're going to have a little look at the differences between the plants in the water and the plants on the land.
So Claire and I are going to be talking about some of the differences with these plants and these seaweeds Let's see if we can see what some of the differences are.
Before we start that, have a look on the PowerPoint there. There's two pictures. We're going to give you a little chance to do a spot the difference. Just think about how they look at the moment. Think about the shapes, the sizes, the colours, the different parts. You're going to have 2 minutes to have a go. Off you go.
One of the differences that I can see is that this plant here has got leaves.
Exactly. Now these seaweeds don't have leaves, although we often refer to these things as leaves. They're actually called blades. Now these are really long and thin, and these ones reach out of the water toward the sun because that's how they photosynthesize. Now that's one of our new words for today, isn't it? And if you don't know what it is, don't worry. What it means is it's the way that the sun provides food for our plants here and our seaweeds. So you'll often find these seaweeds in shallow rocky pools where these lovely blades can reach out towards the sunshine.
So this plant would have roots that would come out of the bottom. That's how it gets its water, and it needs that to survive.
Absolutely. So seaweed does not have roots. It has these things here called holdfasts. Now holdfasts attach the seaweeds to the rocky bottom like this, and it means in really stormy waters it stays really strong. Unlike this one here, the little rock has broken off, but the holdfast is still staying strong on there. Now the blades can then reach up through the water to the sunshine, and these are a little bit different than plants in that they can take on water from every single part of their body.
The flower here is very dry and warm.
And seaweed is always wet and cold, and that's how it really likes it. It likes to stay in the water because it is always wet and cold in there. In fact, if it stays out in the sun for too long, it can get really dry and actually a little bit poorly.
The plant's leaves and stem are very smooth and strong and standing upright.
And as you can see, the seaweed is really floppy. Now, some of them have something called bladders. For example, this one here. Now, not all of them have got bladders, but as you can see here, they're little balls. They act a little bit like armbands. Now, what happens if you put armbands on and you're in the swimming pool? You float. So what happens to these seaweeds is they're under the water, the bladders float to the surface, and these blades can get all of the sunbathing that they want at the top of their rock pool.
And all of these features, their colours, holdfast, bladders, blades, help us to identify the different sorts of seaweed. Now, seaweeds have some challenges surviving, is that right?
Absolutely it is, and now they are all related to climate change. So we're going to talk about this in more detail next lesson. But very briefly, climate change is changing our oceans, and as you remember from last week, the rock pools need certain conditions to survive. They need a certain amount of saltiness, certain temperatures, and certain levels, and climate change is changing all of those. But more to come on that next week. Now, I'm off to go find some more seaweeds. Back in a mo.
So now we've looked a little bit about what seaweeds are and how they live on our shores. Next, we're going to explore some more about seaweeds using our senses.
Now let's think about the objects that we touch and how they feel. We're going to be talking about how land plants feel compared to seaweeds. Now it's important to be careful when you're touching plants because sometimes they can be poisonous. That's one of our words for today, isn't it, poisonous? Do you know what it means? Well, it means it might hurt or it could cause harm.
So we're going to make a list of all the things that we've touched today. And then next to those things, we're going to put a describing word. Can you remember what the technical word for a describing word is? Absolutely, it's an adjective. Let's start like Claire here. We put down all the things that we've touched and then we put a describing word next to it. You can use the worksheet from our website if you want, but you don't have to. I'm going to give you an example. Today, I've touched the sand, and the adjective to describe that sand I would use is gritty.
All right, how are you getting on at home? I've got an example here for you. Today I have made jelly and I thought it was squidgy. I definitely think I need a little bit more time to do some more though. Should we have another minute or so? How do you think I got on, Helen?
How many did you get at home? Which word do you like best? I particularly like that Claire has used the word slimy to describe the hand sanitizer. But how does that relate to seaweeds? Let's have a look at these seaweeds here. And as I touch them, you might have downloaded the worksheet from our website to help you. So we've got slimy and smooth, we've got silky, and we've got wet, and we've got sticky. What words can you get?
When you come and see us later in the year, you might be able to find all the different seaweeds, feel them, and find out some words for them.
Now let's compare this to how land plants feel. You can have a go too at home. There's an activity on the website that can help if you need it.
So, why do land plants and seaweeds feel different?
That's because they adapt to the different habitats in which they live. So if we just think back to a little earlier on, this seaweed here is damp and slimy because it lives in the cold and wet, whereas the land plants are dry because they live on the dry land.
Have you thought about how seaweed smells?
Yes, absolutely. So, smell is another one of our senses, and quite often the seaweed can sort of smell a bit funny. It smells very different to the land plants, which have a lovely, nice, pleasant smell usually. I wonder if you know why.
Yeah, so it's all to do with the chemical makeup of seaweeds. And what happens is when the seaweed comes ashore and it starts to dry out in the sun, it can start to rot and decay. It's also got lots of animals living in it, of course, and lots of salt water from the sea.
Absolutely, yes. Did you work that out at home too? Our other sense is taste. We'll come back to that in a little while. Claire's already thought about sight, so that just leaves our hearing. I'm going to leave you with that little puzzle about how our hearing can be used in relation to seaweed. So let's have a little think about what seaweed is used for. Has anyone eaten seaweed recently? We talked about taste a few moments ago. Right, time for a little quiz. You can either play along with Claire or you might have already downloaded it from our website. What you're going to need if you're going to play along is one area that you're going to call false and one area that you're going to call true. And those will stay the same all the way through. So let's do a practice one together. Seaweed is always green. True or false? Let's have a look what Claire's doing. She's gone into the false one. Did you go into the false one too? She's absolutely correct. That's it, practice over. Question 1. Seaweed can be made to make shampoo and makeup. True or false? True, well done. Question 2. You can take as much seaweed as you want to make your things. True or false? False, well done. Question 3. Seaweed can be used in stir fries and curries. True or false? True, well done. Seaweed can be used to help plants grow in the garden. True or false? Absolutely, it's true, well done. And question number 5. Some people use seaweed for a bath to help them feel good. True or false? True, absolutely, well done.
Wow, did you get all of those at home? That is such a lot of uses for seaweed. I didn't realise it could be used in so many different ways. Now that we've learned a little bit about how seaweed can be used, it's important to understand how to harvest it sustainably.
Sustainable? That's one of our words for today. But what does it mean?
So sustainable means using something in a way that it doesn't get less. For example, the amount of seaweed that we use shouldn't reduce the amount of seaweed that exists.
So here's a quick demo. This is a piece of seaweed that I've found washed up on the beach from the recent storm. I'm going to be making a seaweed picture in a little while. Do I need all this bit of seaweed or do I just need the little bit? I just need the little bit, so I'll take that bit off and then I'll leave the rest of it here. We only take what we need.
So to harvest seaweed, you sometimes need permission from whoever owns the beach. Do make sure you check that first.
There's some other really important rules to make sure that seaweed continues to grow. Rule number 1, don't pull from the base. Rule number 2, don't pull the hole fast. Number 3, don't cut off more than half of one plant. Number 4, check there's no creatures using the seaweed for their home or shelter. And number 5, take care there's nothing on the seaweed that will be dangerous to you. Or, better still, use small bits that have been washed up after a storm, just like I did. Remember the golden rule. Only take what you need and always ask an adult. So there's lots of different fun activities that you can do with seaweed. I'm going to show you a few here now. But don't worry if you don't have access to the beach for your daily exercise, because we're also going to show you some art activities. The first one is pressing seaweed. So for this, you will need a shallow tray with some water in it. You'll need a piece of seaweed, a pencil, some paper. You'll need some newspaper and some kitchen paper. And then the final thing is several heavy books. I've just got one here. So we've filled our tray half full with water. I've used water here from a rock pool. And the first thing that you need to do is that you need to pop your seaweed in to the water. And you make sure that it's wet. And while that's just getting wet there, you take your piece of paper and you pop your name on it. So my name's Helen, and today's date, which is the 4th of March 2021. And because I know that this seaweed here is a little bladderwrack, I'm going to write that on there too. Right. So we've got our seaweed nice and wet, and next we're going to pop our paper in the water. And we're going to arrange our seaweed there on the paper. And then we're going to take our paper out of the water. Make sure that our little seaweed leaves there are out. And if you're happy with how it looks, you then shake a bit of the water off. And I'm going to take our newspaper and we're going to pop that on the newspaper like this. We're going to cover up with our kitchen paper, just like that. We're going to lay it flat, and then we're going to pile up some books on top. If you haven't got any heavy books, you could use heavy stones or anything else that you like that's heavy. I would suggest that you check how your seaweed's drying out every couple of days, and then the seaweed will be attached to the piece of paper.
That looks fun. Don't worry if you haven't got any seaweed though, because you can actually do the same thing with flowers from your garden. You do the exact same process, the only bit you miss out is you don't need to put it in the water first.
Or you could do some artwork. You could use paints, colours, any art materials that you'd got. Create a picture of your seaweed. Don't forget all those different fronds. We'd love to see what you create.
You could also make a necklace from the seaweeds. Now it's a little bit like making a daisy chain for those of you that might have made a daisy chain in the past. You can knot it together if you get a couple of really long bits like I've got here, tie them in a knot at this end. Now you've got all the really pretty different blades that are coming off. Remember, the blades are a little bit like the leaves, so you could even plait them if you wanted to have a go at doing a little plait. And then we can make it into a nice loop. Perhaps this would be better as a crown as it's so big, but look at that, pretty little seaweed crown.
Or you could go and collect lots of seaweed. Let's go and find some. So here's some seaweed that I've collected, and we can make lots of little shapes with it. What we're going to do here, I think that I'm going to make a sort of a snake, I think, and we're going to put it around like that. And he's going to have a nice little tongue coming out there. And we're going to create a body. You can see how it's all twisted up. And then he's going to go to a tail here at the end. Nice thin bit for our snake. There. And don't worry, if you haven't got seaweed that you can actually make these patterns with, you could use string or wool or anything else that you've got at home. Don't forget, send us your pictures. There's also various organisations that do seaweed surveys, and they need our help with this. You would need to be at the beach. But for example, the Natural History Museum do something called the Big Seaweed Survey. Here, on your daily exercise at the beach, you can log your seaweed finds. How much fun would that be?
There are loads of seaweed activities you can try, and it will be awesome when you can come to the beach with us in the summer and try them for yourself. Now you'll remember earlier, Helen asked us if we could explore seaweed through hearing. Did you get anything at home when you've had a think about it? Well, for example, when you rub your hands over it, you can hear it rustling. And actually, when it's wet and you rub it together, you can hear it squeaking. And you can even hear it pop when you get one of the bladders like this.
It's been loads of fun again today. So now we're just going to think about that 3, 2, 1. Remember back to last week when we did this? So what I want you to think about is 3 things that you've learnt today, 2 things that you still want to learn, and 1 question that you have for us. It might be about the seaweed, how it smells or something like that. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to just do that.
Have you got anything at home? I've really enjoyed teaching you all about the different seaweeds and their uses today. And I've really enjoyed getting involved in some of the activities that Helen has shown us too. Maybe you can have a try of some next time you come to the beach, or you could think of your own to give a try to.
And don't forget, if you haven't entered our poster competition, it closes on the 19th of March. Send us your work, we'd love to see it.
Absolutely, we are so looking forward to seeing you again next week for some more 2-minute virtual beach school. Bye!
Bye!